and hello everybody who is with us right now on different platforms and in this meeting. My name is Catalina Flore. I'm an accredited fellow coach with IAPC&M, and I am delighted to have a very special guest today. We have a special day dedicated to the inner leader. And there's nobody better than Monica Jonsson, who is a seasoned master coach and published author, to lead your masterclass right now in human-centered leadership. Monica pioneered corporate coaching sector in Luxembourg and founded the country's first and leading coaching practice, Coach Dynamic, 22 years ago. And she's based in Luxembourg, coaches senior executives, entrepreneurs in the global business community. With more than 90 client companies spanning across a diversity of industry, she has a profound insight into the comprehensive range of issues companies face in an ever-changing business landscape. She's an accredited with IAPCF and is a member of ICF as well. And prior to becoming a coach, she worked in the telecommunication sector. And her experience covers a variety of areas, including strategic consulting, marketing, sales, service development, and supplier management. She's also the author of the best-selling book, The Complete Corporate Coaching Toolkit, which, by the way, I bought a couple of years ago. It's a great book if you work in corporations, but not only. So I strongly recommend it. And today, the Leadership Masterclass welcomes all the coaches who wish to be more effective and impactful with their corporate and business clients. And for coaches already active in the corporate business space, and for those whose ambition is to coach in this domain. We have a very international lady because she's half. Why don't you tell us, Monica?
Half
Welcome.
Swedish, half Swedish, half Peruvian.
Bringing the beauty of all these cultures. So you are a citizen of the world. Without further ado, Monica, please take it over. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for that, Catalina. It is such a pleasure to be back here again. And so I really want to extend thanks for people to take the time, if you're not here today, but watching this on video, that you're taking time out of your busy lives to watch this masterclass titled Human-Centered Leadership Coaching, Tools for Growth and Connection. So I'm going to activate actually the slides that I have prepared for today. So is everyone able to see that? Is that fine? You can see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that really drew me to the coaching profession is its potential to be really a phenomenal force for good. For me personally, as a former senior executive, it has and continues to give me the means to really do my part to contribute to the transformation of a corporate business world into one that is kinder, more human, and above all inclusive. As Catalina says, I've been at this now for 22 plus years, and I've had the privilege to coach executive managers and entrepreneurs to develop their leadership skills and to help them find their leadership voice. And I say this because this is the leadership week for the IAPC&M, and so this is why this is so timely now. The work is often about supporting my clients to update their leadership in order to help them increase their effectiveness and confidence in becoming modern and relevant leaders. Hang on, I'm just going to see there. I just saw someone there. I just admitted them.
I admitted them, yeah.
Okay. To become modern and relevant leaders. Why? Because we're living in a very fast-changing world, and what got you into a certain leadership position may no longer be what's required to take you further. And so this is really one of the things that I will be highlighting in our masterclass today. So the key objectives that we are going to be exploring is I'm going to start with to set a little bit of context about leadership, to set the overall scene. We're going to be reviewing the global evolution of principles and values to understand how this evolution now requires leaders to transform the way they lead in order to be relevant. And I want to also spend a little bit of time on how coaching provides an excellent means and companion to help close the current leadership gap that we see. And following that, I'm going to be sharing with you some powerful leadership tools for coaching your clients. And then we're going to end with a Q&A. So let's dive into it. A common question that I often get from clients in leadership roles across organizations and including the most senior executives is, what does it take to become a great leader? Now, we all recognize great leaders in our presence, but interestingly, no one leader seems to conform to a single template. The topic of leadership, it's big, it's multifaceted, and it triggers a wide range of opinions about what it is precisely, when the truth is that there is no consensus about the exact definition of leadership, funnily enough. But this probably is because what is required from leadership evolves over time and with each generation. I think one thing that we can agree, or most people agree on though, is that leadership is no longer only about seniority and position, but that it is rather about how you behave and what you do. And most of us seem to agree on the following points: that a leader, a person, can be in a top leadership position, but not be leading for whatever reason. And we see this frequently in the world, from business to politics. That leaders can exist at all levels in an organization. And those who take the lead without a title are, of course, a great example of this. Most of us agree that excellent individual contributors or technical experts, they don't by default make good leaders, because there are soft skills, or human skills rather, required for this. And finally, leaders need to inspire followers with a clear purpose that resonates with them. In other words, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if no one wants to follow you, you cannot be a leader. You will walk alone and your people will be disengaged. And Benjamin Hooks expresses this eloquently when he says, if you think you are leading and turn around to see no one following, well, then you are just taking a walk. When I talk about 21st century leadership, I refer to a global paradigm shift towards principles that are now more human by nature, where we are seeing a shift away from the individual heroic leader to developing leaders at all levels, from micromanaging and controlling people to empowering them, from largely predictable business landscapes to operating with high uncertainty, from work environments based in competition to ones that now encourage collaboration, from mindsets defined by it's either win or lose to being more open to find alternatives where all parties can win, from individual contribution to promoting teamwork in order to get better results and outcomes, from workplaces where exclusion of some is accepted to fostering inclusive cultures where everyone can have a sense of belonging, and from an excess focus on profit and greed to an increased focus on purpose. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but it's a summary of points that are important to understand if our client's aim is to be a modern leader, as opposed to being perceived as an outdated one. And as we review these points, we see a clear move away from leadership styles defined by control and command that are steeped in fear, to those that are now focused around people. And this shift represents a real opportunity for coaching, Because coaching, being a profession in service of others and centered around principles like humanity, unity, inclusion, and collaboration, coaching can really play an essential role in supporting organizations to navigate this change and challenge. Because research tells us that employees across all 4 generations today, who do they want to work for? They want to work for human-oriented and inclusive organizations with meaningful purposes that resonate with them. And therefore, modern 21st century leadership requires aptitude from anyone in a leadership position in these soft or human skills. So we can see now how a more holistic employee experience is in play, as opposed to the traditional transactional one. And what do I mean when I say that? Well, a transactional one is I pay you a salary, you do your job, full stop. So how does this global paradigm shift translate into actual leadership traits? Well, these are some examples. Connectedness, the ability to form and maintain networks with key stakeholders across the organization, as opposed to traditionally being focused on silos. Humility, being open to listen, learn, and share credit with others. Honesty, being transparent and speaking openly when required. Empathy, very much in the spotlight, demonstrating sensitivity to the feeling of others. Trust, extending it and empowering our colleagues. Flexibility, well, in this ever-changing business environment, having the ability to change and adapt when required. And last on this list, but by no means least, vulnerability. So having the courage as a leader to be human and to also acknowledge mistakes. Now, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but I think it provides a good understanding about the traits now sought after from employees really globally. This evolution requires the majority of leaders to renew, to update, and to ultimately transform their leadership. Because with the tone set at the top, leaders need to pave the way by transforming how they lead to align with modern principles and be the example through their own behavior, actions, and decisions. They need to regularly connect with and seek to be relevant to those they lead in order to cultivate the human-oriented cultures in demand by today's employees. And herein lies the leadership challenge. This is the leadership challenge. But unfortunately, most organizations have been really slow to acknowledge this evolution, which over time has led to a disconnect with employees. And these disconnect figures are really high when you're looking at the research. So because leaders haven't listened, or in many cases have simply ignored what people require to be engaged and motivated at work, we see this disconnect evidenced in a widespread global disengagement. It really remains my conviction as corporate coach over a long time now that corporate cultures defined by inclusion, kindness, and humanness will outperform those which are not. And that this is going to be key to building future-proof businesses. And I know that things are looking particularly bleak in the world right now, but I do remain hopeful for a universal transformation of the world, including the corporate business environment, where leadership can unite people rather than divide them, where collaboration becomes the modus operandi, where people can feel safe, well, and motivated to bring their whole selves to work. And my purpose and passion is really to contribute to this vision through the work that I do here in this little part of the world to help create a positive ripple effect by coaching senior executives and leadership teams. And I also see this as a massive call to action for leaders everywhere to foster workplace cultures through their leadership in order to attract and retain the talent so desperately needed to build organizations that are sustainable and that are future-proof. So as I mentioned earlier, coaching really offers the perfect support for leaders seeking to address this leadership challenge. So how so? Well, I think as everyone on this call knows, coaching seeks to ignite self-awareness and responsibility within the person being coached. Self-awareness through encouraging reflection about what do I really want? What do I want to improve? What do I want to achieve? how am I operating on a day-to-day basis, and how am I being perceived? Where responsibility addresses, what am I going to do about it? What options are available to me? It's about taking responsibility and stop blaming situation on other people and their circumstances. And so with that in mind, coaching encourages people to think results-oriented, set those relevant SMART goals, and find personalized strategies to achieve those goals. Now, there's nothing complicated about coaching. Quite the contrary, it's a pretty straightforward and pragmatic process. However, explaining it to others in a concise and crisp manner can sometimes be a bit of a challenge, as most coaches are discovering when they are passionately trying to convey the power of this practice. And this is why shortly after launching my coaching practice, I created this illustration as a visual aid to explain the coaching process and assure alignment with my clients from the outset. So with coaching being goal-centric, the goal really sits at the center of the coaching process. Once we know what we're going for, and that goal is very clearly defined, it's the goal that triggers the actions. Once we implement actions, we get feedback from stakeholders, ourselves, from the coach, and that feedback is what moves us into the learning, where we see the results of what we have implemented. And where it is very much a journey in self-awareness. So the process consisting of several phases, I will often point out that coaching is a journey, where the journey is as important as the destination, and in many cases, maybe even more important sometimes than the actual destination. There are 3 key skills in coaching conversations. You all know them, but it's worth reminding ourselves: presence and curiosity, open questioning, and high-level listening. I think for me, a central and beautiful principle in coaching is that people often have the answers and wisdom within themselves. They may simply not have asked themselves the right questions. So it is important to be fully present, to demonstrate this curiosity, and to ask open questions which lead to new insights and better decisions. And then, of course, to listen at the highest level. Socrates allegedly said, "I cannot teach anyone anything. I can only make them think." And so he seems to have understood the concept of coaching way before the term as we know it today was coined, which is interesting. So this brings us to some impactful tools that, together with a coaching approach, can be used to develop and advance leadership skills with our clients. So when I started out as a coach, I quickly realized that practical tools for popular topics such as leadership, effective communication, stakeholder management would be very useful complement to the coaching conversation. I really felt that the right tools not only has the potential to accelerate the client's progress, but also to provide them with the support well beyond the coaching assignment. Yet, when I went looking for such a toolkit, I never found one that really met my expectations. So in the end, I created the tools I was looking for myself. Fast forward to a few years ago, given the proven effectiveness of the tools, along with clients' continuous positive feedback, I decided to write a book and to make this toolkit available to coaches and leaders globally. So the book is titled The Complete Corporate Coaching Toolkit, Quintessential Guide for 21st Century Business Coaches and Leaders. It's available on Amazon. It's printed in color and A4 format to maximize the reader's ease of use and learning experience. The tools presented in the book are developed for one-to-one coaching and over 15,000 coaching hours with executives in numerous organizations and across multiple industries. I wrote the book with 2 audiences in mind. So professional coaches who want to be more effective coaching their clients, and also professional coaches who want to enter the corporate world. And for people in leadership roles at any level where the tools in the book can be used to self-coach. I would say that this book really delivers on the promise of a practical and ready-to-use toolkit. You can take the tools, you can use them at once. And moreover, it has a strong emphasis on leadership, because it also addresses what it takes to be an effective and relevant leader in a world that's now constantly changing. In the table of contents, you will see that it includes the 7 most popular soft skills in the corporate business domain, with leadership divided into 2 parts, developing the client's own leadership skills and also supporting them in leading their teams. Leadership followed by effective communication, emotional intelligence, stakeholder management, influencing and negotiation, personal efficiency and effectiveness, and life balance. Of these 7 topics, leadership continues to be the most popular topic by far, which is why it occupies the largest section in the toolkit. And in today's masterclass, I will be sharing with you some tools from the book's first leadership part, general leadership skills. And to make this a useful experience for you, I haven't been able to use exactly the original tool templates, but in order for you to get a good look and feel what the original tools look like as they are presented in the book and to clients in A4 format, I made 2 screenshots here of 2 of the tools I will be covering today. So as you can see, every tool has a name, followed by the topic it belongs to, in this case, leadership, followed by the exercise, which are questions or concepts for the client to work with. The numbers that you see with the tool here, those are only for reference purposes in the book, so that clients or readers actually can find the tool that they are looking for. So the first tool I'm going to begin with, and that I usually start with clients wanting to look at leadership, is called What Makes a Good Leader? Now, this tool invites clients to think about leadership from their own experience being led by others. And you know, even though leadership is such a hot topic, I have found that people seldom stop to think about what it really means for them. And therefore, the first question in this tool is, what does leadership mean for you? Now, this may be a simple question, but it triggers a lot of useful reflection about the meaning behind the word for the client. Next, I will ask the client to think of 1 or more people in a leadership position, past or present, who have inspired them. And I ask them to list the qualities of that leader, only the qualities, so only those keywords. I then ask them to think about the values and behaviors that they consider to be important in a leadership context. So to be a good leader, what values do you believe someone needs to have? So we all know then that values are a person's principles and standards about what's important. And then in terms of behavior, I ask them, what specific behaviors do you think a good leader should demonstrate when interacting and relating to others? And finally, what comes to mind now that you have completed the exercise? So as you can see, the purpose of the questions in this first tool is really to activate the emotive parts within the client, as opposed to coming at things from a purely intellectual point of view. And this is really essential because leadership is ultimately an emotional transaction. So not surprisingly, when clients are asked to think about what makes a leader inspiring, most of the qualities that they identify will be in this human skills domain. And their reflections and insights following these initial questions will provide a really good foundation for you to explore further with the client on this topic. So as I mentioned, one of the main objectives in coaching is, of course, to help deepen our client's self-awareness. Because to Aristotle's point, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And so once the client has considered their experience of being led by others, now is the time to turn the thinking inward, to reflect on themselves and their own leadership. And so to that end, I may ask them to reflect and complete the following tool called self-awareness. When do you take time to reflect about yourself in your role as leader? And the realization here is usually Not enough time. I don't do it sufficiently. How would you describe your leadership style? Here I ask the client to really, again, list the characteristics that they consider to be strong and weaker. How aware are you, client, about the impact you have on others as leader? And is that impact what you want it to be? And I ask them to elaborate about this. This question is closely linked to emotional intelligence, as it requires the client to consider their leadership also from the perspective of others. So taking this external perspective is new to many clients and will typically trigger their curiosity to start paying attention to and better understand the aspect of the impact they have on others. What do you want to achieve for the area of business you manage? So we're in vision purpose here. And to articulate one's vision and purpose in a way that's understood and compelling to others, as we know, this will usually require some in-depth thinking for the client. Because to inspire and create engagement, having a captivating vision is, of course, a necessity. How would you describe your leadership voice? And how would you like to continue to develop it? Again, not many have given thought to their leadership of voice. So to help spark thinking here, I will usually need to clarify this point for the client. I will tell them that, our leadership voice reflects how we show up. It conveys your core values. For example, how you articulate your vision, how you contribute your ideas, how you engage others, how you deliver feedback or handle conflict. Knowing that today's leaders need to inspire followers, what leadership behaviors do you need to demonstrate and or develop to be effective? And what behaviors are you displaying that prevent you from achieving this? So this set of questions reminds clients that today's leaders need to inspire followers. What kind of leader do you want to be? In other words, what does the client want to be known for? So we're into legacy here. How do they want others to speak about them? And so I ask them to complete this sentence. I want to be the kind of leader who, and then they complete the sentence. And once the client has articulated this and knows what they're aspiring towards, this becomes what I like to call our lighthouse in the context of the work that we do together. And we can then continue to return to this in our session because they have clarity about the kind of leader they want to be. And finally, in this tool, and so important, how will you know that you are succeeding in your practice to become the leader you want to be? What will the success factors or evidence be? And I ask them to elaborate on that. This last question helps the client to visualize and really internalize what that would be. So from here, we're going to move to leadership styles. So Daniel Goleman is often referred to as the father of emotional intelligence, and he has also conducted a lot of research about leadership, where he states the best leaders don't know just one style of leadership. They are skilled at several and have the flexibility to switch between styles as circumstances dictate. Now, being the most popular soft skill topic among executives, it's no surprise that many models have been developed around leadership styles, and I'm sure you've seen many of them. But one that continues to stand out for me, still today, has been developed by Goleman and consulting firm Haymack Beers. And by studying close to 4,000 managers, they uncovered 6 distinct leadership styles: visionary, pace-setting, affiliate, coercive, democratic, and coaching. And alongside these 6, they also define the modus operandi, that leadership in a phrase, when the style works best, and its impact, long-term impact on culture. So as an example, when we look at visionary, the modus operandi, it mobilizes and inspires people towards a shared vision and that larger purpose. In one phrase, come with me. The style works best when explicit vision and direction is required, and the long-term impact on culture is positive. So of these 6 styles, we see that visionary, affiliate, democratic, and coaching generate conditions that have a positive impact on company cultures. The other 2, pace-setting and coercive, are absolutely useful in certain situations, but should be applied with care due to their negative long-term impact. So when we need to use them as leaders, we dip into them, we use them, and then we come out of there. I must say, I really love this model because it demonstrates in such a simple and elegant way why no leadership style can be regarded as absolute, and quite the contrary. And to Goleman's point, to be an effective and well-rounded leader, we need to be mindful about the situation and the purpose and the person, and we need to use the style deemed most suitable. And I can tell you that this tool sparks great interest with clients because it provides the clients with the kind of framework that many have yearned for. It makes the abstract aspect of leadership more real and more concrete for them to be able to identify what areas they actually need to work on. So in a coaching scenario, I will typically take the client through the chart. I'll start coaching them to connect the dots back to their role and their mandate. And once the client has made an initial analysis with me, I will then ask them to continue their reflection and answer the following 3 questions as homework for the next session. So, which of the 6 are your preferred natural style? Which of the 6 would be useful to incorporate into your main leadership style, and to what end? And what do you need to do to make this happen in order to expand your leadership repertoire and thereby become more effective in your leadership role? So as you can imagine, the client's insight provide a really good ground here for the coaching conversation, so that you as coach can really help support them to turn these insights into really meaningful actions. Now, as we mentioned before, sort of self-reflection is then key to attaining a good degree of self-awareness. Self-awareness is ultimately the path to great leadership. And to regularly reflect on, are my leadership behaviors, decisions, and actions resulting in the outcomes that I want? And this brings us to our next and final tool that I want to share with you in this masterclass. So, self-reflection. I recommend that clients block time, otherwise it doesn't happen. So ideally weekly, to contemplate on how they lead and how impactful they are. Because this helps them to adjust ineffective behaviors and make better decisions. However, blocking time is the easy part. How to reflect on oneself is not always so straightforward. So the purpose of creating this tool was really to provide examples of questions for my clients to help guide this kind of reflection and to motivate them to create a habit of doing this regularly. So, are my leadership decisions and actions resulting in the outcomes I want? If yes, then what's the evidence for that? And if no, then why not? How well do I connect, listen, and seek to understand the people around me? If I put myself in the shoes of those I lead, does my style and behavior reflect how I want to be led? In other words, would I follow me? So encouraging the client to also take a second position to themselves and reflect from there. Am I leading and communicating sufficiently from a bigger picture perspective when it comes to vision, purpose, and strategy? And if not, then what's blocking me from doing so? Yeah, in this extremely busy world, it's easy to get bogged down in these operational details and assume that the bigger picture is obvious to everyone else. But here the client is reminded about the importance of that bigger picture communication as well. How often do I seek feedback about myself from those around me? When we're looking to sharpen our skills like leadership or any kind of more soft skill, then feedback is obviously the most valuable means of knowing that we're on track. And because it takes courage to ask for feedback, this may not be so easy to put into practice at the outset, but it is an area where we as coaches can help the client to find their courage to start doing this. Am I taking care of myself and my well-being to be the best possible version of myself? So is anything missing? What do I need? So tapping into the importance of self-care and life balance. Am I in alignment with the kind of leader I need to be, or I want to be rather? So you will recall that the client has previously defined what kind of leader they want to be, that lighthouse that I was referring to in the tool self-awareness. So having that clarity makes it concrete for them to really go back and consider this point in their self-reflection. And the final question in this tool, following my reflections, what do I need to be more mindful about? So that concludes the 4 tools that I wanted to share with you today. And I want to do a brief return to the book because I also want to show you how each tool, this is one that we looked at today, is also accompanied by a text box to its right. And the text box provides a detailed explanation about the tool and how to best use the tool. So I will usually present a relevant tool to the client at the end of a coaching session as homework for the next session to encourage a more profound reflection and set the client up for thoughtful and meaningful action so that we keep growing and building on our conversation all the time. A quick reminder before we launch into Q&A. So the book is printed in A4 format, makes for a perfect workbook, which is why I do recommend to get it in paper version. I invite you to check out the reader reviews. There are many of them on Amazon from both professional coaches and also business leaders from around the world. The tools in the book, they are covering leadership, effective communication, emotional intelligence, stakeholder management, influencing and negotiation, personal efficiency and effectiveness, and life balance. These tools can be downloaded from our website, where you will also find a few of them downloadable for free. If you're running your own coaching practice, when you download them, it also allows you to be able to put your logo in the header of those tools. On the same website, coachdynamics.com, you can also see a list of all our client companies, as well as testimonials and other useful information. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, where I regularly post about these 7 topics. So I would really love to connect with you there. And you will find me by searching on my name, Monica Jonsson. So I think with that, I'm going to stop the share. Voila. And we can move to Q&A.
But first of all, Monica, thank you so much for your generosity, for sharing this. And I told you at the beginning, it's a great book. So thank you for demonstrating for us. And I was wondering, from the perspective of leaders, what do you see as the biggest barrier executives face when transitioning from traditional leadership to more modern human-centered approaches?
So the people that are sitting in leadership positions today are my generation, and we have really been educated very differently and grown up in a corporate world which was very much sort of command and very often kind of steeped in fear. And I think when you've grown up that way, it can be difficult to understand that you need to give something else compared to what you received yourself. So I see also sometimes in these bigger, more famous firms, it's kind of like the pushback I sometimes get is, yeah, but well, I had to do that, or I this is the way I made it. I was strong, I'm fine. So the biggest barrier is very often ourselves. And it's about really understanding and being willing to understand that, wow, okay. But on the other hand, this is what the disengagement looks like in our firm. And the only ones that are going to turn that around is us. There is also that really desperate need for talent, the right talent. And what has happened in today's world is that the younger generation, before they go to work somewhere, they are really going to do their research on the companies. And they are choosing away firms where my generation would have loved to work because it felt so prestigious. And they're choosing them away because the cultures in those firms don't resonate with them anymore. So if the companies, like I said, if they want to build sustainable companies for the future, you're going to need to adapt and change to what employees today really want. And once people get that, that's when they can start working on that. But you know, also with coaching, only what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. Because even though professional coaches are fantastic, we are not magicians. So people need to really be willing to do this work and transform their leadership.
Absolutely. I'm with you. If I were now my coaching, then
Yeah,
absolutely agree with you. And you know, coaching can work when the person is ready to look at themselves
yeah,
and to see how they think and how they act and take
yeah,
responsibility. Absolutely.
yeah.
That's very important. And if I put now the coaching hat again, you emphasize that tools can accelerate learning and complement, you know, the coaching conversation.
Mhm.
What mistakes do coaches often make when using tools, and how can they be avoided? Until you think about this, please, the others, feel free to put in the chat questions for Monica.
Mm. I must say that nothing comes to mind in terms of making mistakes as such. Again, this is why I give these also too. So sometimes maybe things can be maybe a little bit maybe misunderstood, maybe or going down another context. This is why it's so valuable for them. That's why I give it as homework. So I set the context for the tool. I give it as homework. They fill it out. They come back with it into the session so that we really can have a deeper conversation about their reflection. Uh, but really, no mistakes really come to my mind. I can't say that. It's more like when you see a certain answer, then you as coach can dig deeper. When you say this, what
Yes.
do you really mean? And let's look at this from another perspective. Have you considered this when you say that? And what could that look like? So
Yeah.
that's what I think is so great about the tools, because this in between session reflection also with some homework, then the client doesn't just show up like, yeah, no, I've just thought about it. They actually have really thought about it. And that's I think the power also of coaching is the accountability that I'm going to see my coach in 3 days. So let me sit down and think about this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we know, you know very well, in order to get better answers, we need to ask better questions.
Mhm.
Your book, it's very, very useful in helping coaches guide the conversation.
Mhm.
And in the same time, it doesn't take the necessity, it doesn't take away the necessity of being present
Mm.
with a client and go where is needed. I don't know
Yeah.
if you remember, early 22 years ago, for me, it was also around this. Um, Maybe when you became a coach, maybe you had some prepared questions. I had, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
Um, and in time, you learn, of course, to let them, you know, and
Mhm.
be me present. So, how would you coach the coaches that, you know, maybe are at the beginning, they're taking their book your book, they're buying your book, to blend your tools with the necessity of being present and trusting.
I love that you're asking this question, because one really does remember what it was like at the outset when one started out coaching, and you were so self-conscious about, and you wanted to do right by your client, and wait a minute, how many what questions and how questions and why and this and that, and am I really asking the right question? So
nice memories.
Yeah, you really feel quite self-conscious because you want to do so well by your client. And I think all of us go through that. And it would be strange if we didn't, because it really comes from being heartfelt, wanting to deliver great coaching. But, nothing kind of beats, there's this thing about 10,000 hours. I don't know if it's 10,000 hours, but there's nothing that beats experience. So to any new coaches, I always say, any opportunity you get, coach, keep coaching, and look at these appendixes with questions to inspire you and kind of get the questioning in your DNA. Because again, we're not educated to ask questions. So it's not really in our DNA to do so. We need to learn that skill. And then you kind of find after a while, after maybe a couple of years, that you stop taking the focus on yourself. You actually completely put the focus on the client. And when you do that, and you have the courage to trust the process, that's when the magic happens. Because that's when you're almost like channeling the questions that are right in that moment. Because you are in the client's world, and you have taken the focus of yourself. And that's when those questions come, because you know them, you've studied them so much, and then they just come through you without you really thinking too much about them. So I think when you coach from the heart, the magic of coaching comes through.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Is the learning process and getting into our heart, and then the magic starts. That was wonderful. I don't see any other questions, Monica.
No.
For me, it's been a pleasure. If you have any final thoughts for us.
I think leadership, the topic of leadership, I'm glad that the IAPC&M are running this week, because there is almost nothing as important as that. We've been talking today about the business environment. We can see it all around us in the world today. We mustn't give up because it's hard. This is a call to action for everyone. We need to continue to drive forward, lead by example. I really feel coaching is a phenomenal vehicle for this. And it doesn't just have to be leaders in the corporate world, it's any leaders. If you can get in and work with leaders and help them to become more human in their approach and their style, and that we can build a more inclusive world where everyone has a sense of belonging, then that's fantastic. So
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's really been my pleasure, Catalina. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am inspired from a fellow coach that it's been very useful, and I hope that people will take action, because that's the way to go.
That's the way to go.
Towards human-centered. And your book as well, it's a great tool for those interested. Thank you, Monica. I'm going to stop the recording and wish you a beautiful rest of the day. Thank you for sharing yourself and your wisdom with us today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.